Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Soul Seekers podcast, where we believe that hunting has the power to transform lives through primal adventure as we share our mission of mentorship is conservation. To learn more about everything we do, check out our show on Carbon TV or go to soulseekersnation.com. Freedom on, everybody, and stay soulful. This podcast is also proudly brought to you by onX Hunt. When I first got into hunting, I kept hearing all about public land and different access and how to find different locations to hunt. I was like, well, how are people even identifying all this stuff? Well, sure enough, I came across the number one hunting GPS app, and that is onX Hunt. If you guys want to get better at hunting and go deeper into your scouting, onX Hunt is the number one GPS app for that. Join the millions of hunters who trust onX Hunt to find more game, discover new access, and hunt smarter. It was a game changer for me, and I know it's going to be a game changer for you if you've never used it. If you have used it, you know the power that it holds. Guys, I really hope you enjoy this episode. If you want to know more about onX, go to onxmaps.com/hunt and check out their app. Be blessed, freedom on, and stay soulful. All right, guys, if you're in the market for a new hunting rifle this coming year, look no further than a Kelbley's rifle. I've been rocking their Coda rifle for the last couple seasons, and I've had great success with it. It's an amazing shooter, and every time I put one of their rifles in somebody's hands, they're like, oh, I got to get one of these. Kelbley's holds over 92 world and national records that are either broken or set on one of their actions or rifles. So they really set a higher level of accuracy. If you want to know more about Kelbley's rifles, go to kelbley.com. That's KELBLY.com. Tell them Johnny Mack sent you with Soul Seekers, and go enjoy shooting that much more in this coming hunting season. Be blessed, everybody. Go check out Kelbley Rifles. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Soul Seekers podcast. I'm your host, Johnny Mack. Sorry, and I apologize for the off voice. I've been having a battle of the allergies in my world. Nothing like a little Texas grass to get you going. Anyways, with that being said, we're going to be opening up this podcast as a little bit of an informational awareness episode all about saving the hunt, defending the hunt. Wildlife deserve better. And really going for it. So I want to open it up with a little quote. It's a remake off of Dr. Niemöller's quote out of World War II. It says, "First they came for the trappers, but I did not speak out because I was not a trapper. Then they came for the houndsmen, and I did not speak out because I was not a houndsman. Then they came for the predator hunters, and I did not speak out because I was not a predator hunter. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak. Every hunter an outdoorsman." And so if that doesn't give you an idea of what we're going to be talking about, we're going to be diving into this whole idea of Proposition 127 out in the state of Colorado with the ballot box initiative to take away cougar and bobcat hunting, and how that is a domino effect across the West and across hunting, that if the anti-hunters can successfully succeed in taking away and overcoming actual biology management in the North American model of wildlife conservation, then they have the keys to the door to take down hunting everywhere, which, by the way, it's not just that state. You gotta get outside of your comfort zone. Just because you're a Texan doesn't mean they can't come and attack the hunting in Texas. They're already looking at outlawing trapping cougars in Texas, and it's just a small step that turns into a much larger one. So without further ado, we have Mr. Dan Gates from Coloradans of Responsible Wildlife Management here to talk all about Proposition 127 and what's going on with that. Brother Gates, thanks for coming on the show.
Johnny, thanks a bunch for kind of trying to battle your allergies and having me on and let me continue to ride the coattails of the podcast world, which this is my 84th podcast this year now. So
I love that you're keeping track. Well done.
Yeah. Thanks. We appreciate the opportunity. And, you and I spoke a couple times, and I know you talked to the Howl guys, and I think you had Mark Truex on at one of the, I think that was that the SHOT Show or the Western Hunt Expo?
That was that SHOT Show. Yep.
Yeah. And that SHOT Show is when we rode the coattails of the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation when they did the press conference for us, and we got a chance to kind of launch this whole effort pretty much all before we had the issues committee formed, which is Colorado Wildlife Deserve Better. And we'll say it multiple times, but it's wildlifedeservebetter.com. And while I'm the executive director for the Coloradans for Responsible Wildlife Management, that's the parallel movement that started this whole process back in 2020, September 22nd of 2023, when the antis dropped the initiative on us. And while most organizations were going hunting and had no idea that this stuff was going on, Mr. Truex with Pac West Strategies and I myself had a conversation well before that date, and we're in preparation for this to happen because of what we have been so successful on over the course of the previous 4 or 5 years during this political administration here. And we've been fighting this ever since September 22nd of last year. So while some people might be just brought up to speed, or maybe they've heard about things over the last 30 or 60 or 90 days, this has been a 13-month process that will culminate on November 5th, as the voters of Colorado will get a chance to vote to see, just like what you said, to prohibit the hunting of mountain lions, bobcats, and lynx, and have a bunch of other things thrown into there that are included in the blue book that I will dissect to where people can understand how important this is and why it's so important, whether they live in Colorado or not. But then we'll give a little bit of an explanation of what people can do, whether they live here or not, and how we might, be able to beg, borrow, and steal off of them over the course of the next 26, 27 days, hopefully.
Yeah, absolutely. It was really interesting, originally being from the state of Washington and leaving Washington as spring bear got stripped away, and knowing how impactful that hunt was for me as a hunter, and the growth and opportunities that I gained from hunting bears specifically in the springtime. I ended up taking a deer out of that exact same bear location because I was cross training, is what I like to call it, for hunting. Mm-hmm. I saw elk, I saw turkeys, I saw deer, I saw bear, found mushrooms, all of that because I was out in the woods in the springtime hunting bears and doing my job on predator management. Beyond that, it's really fascinating that as I left Washington, there was like a sigh of relief that I had, where it's like, oh man, okay, I'm out of a state that isn't, trying to self-sabotage and delete hunting forever.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But that's a very poor look on hunting and the pastime, the hobby, the lifestyle, the way of life, whatever you want to call it, whatever adjective that you want to use, or noun that you want to use to describe what hunting means to you. It is time for us as human beings, as Americans, to actually stand up for freedom, for justice, for sovereignty, because they're taking away one way to be able to feed ourselves. And whether or not a lot of people eat bobcat or mountain lions, that's not the point. The point is that now they're attempting to take away one of the ways in which you can feed yourself, and that just is not right, beyond all the other things. So why don't you, Mr. Gates, why don't you start off, since you have the initiative Proposition 127 in front of you? Why don't you go ahead and read how they've labeled that in the ballot?
Yeah, in the ballot. And this started out as Initiative 91, which is the standard practice and procedure until it's certified. Then it becomes a proposition. And this is Colorado is one of 26 states that actually allow for this process to occur, to where citizens can go and file the proper paperwork and get the language that they want. And then if they can get the signatures to get it on the ballot, then the people get to vote on it. The way that this has become is it's not so much citizen driven. It's not citizens petition like this here. This is driven from animal rights extremist groups from Delaware and from Virginia and from Baltimore and from the West Coast, ironically, where you came from Washington. And they formulated this organization called Cats Aren't Trophies, which is the Issues Committee. So it's not the citizen process. These people they weren't even connected to here. They moved here from Washington to become a citizen, but then the big money has come in from out-of-state extremist groups. Formerly, Wayne Pacelli of the Humane Society of the United States is the director, the CEO of this animal welfare action that is actually funding this whole program. And so they go under the guise of, oh, we're going through the citizens process. Well, the citizens process should not be allowed to be handled and initiated by people from out of state. That's the overreach of extremist groups. And so what they came up with was, and after we changed multiple parts of the language in the ballot, what will end up on the ballot and what will be on the ballot on November 5th is a change to the Colorado revised statutes concerning a prohibition on the hunting of mountain lions, lynx, and bobcats, and in connection therewith, prohibiting the intentional killing, wounding, pursuing, entrapping, or discharging or releasing of a deadly weapon at a mountain lion, lynx, or bobcat, while creating 8 exceptions to this prohibition, including for the protection of human life, property, and livestock, establishing a violation of this prohibition to a Class 1 misdemeanor, and increasing fines and limiting wildlife license privileges for persons convicted of this crime. Now, the reason I read it like that, because that's exactly the way that the people will look at it on the ballot. I'm going to read you how it started and how we were able to turn around and get it changed to the tune of several $100,000 through the Secretary of State, the Supreme Court, the title board process, attorneys, issues committees, you name it. We spent every single dime that we possibly had to and left no stone unturned. The initial title that they tried to get through that we got changed was a change to the Colorado revised statutes concerning a prohibition on the trophy hunting of mountain lions, lynx, and bobcats, and in connection therewith defining trophy hunting as the intentional killing, wounding, pursuing, entrapping, or discharging or releasing of a deadly weapon in the mountain lion, lynx, or bobcat, and creating exemptions from this prohibition, including for the protection of human life, property, and livestock, establishing trophy hunting as a Class 1 misdemeanor, and increasing fines and limiting wildlife license privileges for persons convicted of this crime. The reason all that is important is because that language that's still in the measure about trophy hunting is what the opposition or the proponents of the measure are bragging about, that this is what this is. It's a trophy hunting measure because we're still allowing for these exceptions. Well, they're not allowing for the exceptions. The exceptions are already in Colorado statute. The exceptions have to do with defense of human life, livestock, personal property, and a motor vehicle, or by an employer or contractor of a federal, state, or local agency acting in the official capacity or with a special license from CPW, including to manage animals that pose a threat to agricultural resources. Now, California does similar type things where they let the government guys go in and kill, but that's not part of hunting. You and I know that. That's part of human-animal conflict.
Right.
That's depredation issues. The misnomer about what is in here is when they say trophy hunting as defined, okay, it's not in the title like that anymore, so the person isn't going to see that unless they look at this 109-page blue book. But as far as the ballot measure itself, the language will appear as the first language that I read. But defining trophy hunting in the measure as intentionally killing, wounding, pursuing, entrapping, or discharging or releasing of a deadly weapon. I want to emphasize that because that's hunting. That's not trophy hunting.
Right.
It doesn't say if it's got big antlers or it weighs 160 pounds or it's got some big giant skull that you can turn around and score. It says for the purpose of intentionally killing, which I don't know anybody that intentionally wounds. That's not hunting.
Right.
But intentionally killing, wounding, pursuing, stalking, or entrapping. Come on. The average person would say, well, that's absolute bullshit.
Right.
But if you look at the language that they've embedded into this, it'll be the first time that trophy hunting is defined in the United States with a definition of hunting. And you can essentially take a case law precedent, a preemptive strike from their side, and nose underneath the tent. And if they get this accomplished, take mountain lions and bobcats out of the equation and put bighorn sheep and put moose and put elk or coyotes or whatever you want to be considered a trophy, because this will be the first time that trophy hunting has been defined. And that's where people need to wake up and understand that this is not a one-off. This is not about mountain lions and bobcats. This is not about anything other than their initial attempt to get their nose underneath the tent and take all hunting. As has Wayne Pacelli has said on many, many occasions before, we go case by case, state by state, species by species. Our ultimate goal is to stop it all.
Hmm. It's truly incredible the hate that people have through what they consider the love for animals.
Oh
Right?
God.
Right.
Yeah.
It's they hate what we do, therefore because we do it, they more or less hate us. But they're for love, and they're for the continuation of life, which is ironic because through death brings life, and that is how the circle of life goes, no matter what culture you come from.
Well, and I think we're getting to the point too, to where the overwhelming majority of the general public is starting to read through the lines if they're showed what the lines actually have. And to that point, just 2 days ago, Cats Aren't Trophies wrote an email to their members, to their supporters. We told you that the Safari Club International was shoveling hundreds of thousands of dollars to the effort to defeat Proposition 127. So are the Fur Takers of America and the North American Wild Sheep Foundation and the Rocky Mountain Bighorn Society and the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation, who are all trophy hunters of major animals, including bighorn sheep and all of the other rare sheep like them throughout the world. We need to stop them in their tracks, and this is our first step. That's their email. Come on, people. I wish you and I talked before this about how many people didn't vote in 2020 on the wolf issue here.
Yeah.
They didn't think it was going to pass. Colorado is not the state that it was 20 or 30 years ago. I'm not saying everybody is liberally minded and anti-hunting, but if they don't know the facts, they're more than likely going to turn around and follow the squeaky wheel or the message that gets them across the aisle or across the fence because nobody told them different.
Right.
Colorado Parks and Wildlife cannot speak on this because the governor has indicated that they can't. If the governor said you can speak the facts, they would be able to speak the facts. But they are the governing managing agency, and the governor himself has said, no, you don't talk about this. Do not talk about that. Him and his husband are animal rights extremists to the max, and they have undermined every single thing when it comes to our wildlife management and natural resources in the state. They're not my biggest fans, I'll tell you that. What we've seen is an undermining of the commission, an undermining of appointments, an undermining of the legislature, an undermining of the ideology about why we have what we have, how we got it, and how they want to stop it. And their intent is to stop it as much as what they possibly can before Governor Polis is term limited and gets out of here in January of 27. This is not a one-off. This is not something about low-hanging fruit. I've said this many, many times over the course of the last 13 months of fighting this and standing in front of thousands of people over the course of that time and talking to millions. There's less bighorn sheep hunters, mountain goat hunters, and moose hunters in the state of Colorado than there is mountain lion hunters combined. And they consider mountain lion to be the low-hanging fruit. They just laid their cards out 2 days ago when they sent that email out talking about bighorn sheep and the other conservation organizations that we all are members of and that we all support.
Right.
This is an opportunity for them to turn around and plant their flag. And I'm saying over my goddamn dead body.
Right. Right. Yeah. Why do you think hunters, and this is a very broad general statement, but why do you think why do you think hunters are not that motivated or historically have not been?
Sportsmen and women historically they're not isolationist, but they like to do things on their own. They might hunt in a party and they might have some buddies and they might like to share their secret little spot. But in the general concept of things, they like to go hunting and they do it in small groups. And it's inconvenient to include politics and animal rights extremism into that. we owe it to our forefathers and to our kids and ourselves to do what's right by supporting science-based wildlife management and the North American model of wildlife conservation. That's a job. It's a task. You don't just do it by buying a license. You contribute to the cause, but 50 years ago when RMEF and those guys were formulated 40, 50 years ago, they had a few naysayers and a few outliers out there, but they were doing it from the conservation standpoint, from the stewardship, from the habitat, from the resource. They didn't have as many naysayers of the animal extremists as what we have now. Now it's become an industry for these groups to turn around and stop what these other conservation groups started. The bad part about it is that they weren't formulated to turn around and fight. They were formulated to do the yeoman's work, the conservation work, to make sure they worked hand in hand with the agencies and the federal government on land habitat conservation and so forth. The antis built this juggernaut while we're sitting here doing the yeoman's work on the efforts. The antis built up these juggernauts to turn around and say, look at our enemy. Our enemy has no army. Our enemy has people that turn around and hunt. Our enemy has people that turn around and do the conservation work, but they don't have the lobbying effort that we do. They don't have the lies and deceit, and they've befuddled us to the point to where we didn't work together hand in hand as well as what they have, and they've turned around and built up an army that has been lied to, but we haven't told our story. I'm sitting on coalitions and collaborative efforts with every single organization that you could possibly think of. And I vice chair the Colorado Wildlife Conservation Project. And every Friday we meet and we have these conversations. And it's been the hardest thing for me to do. And I'm not just calling them out because a lot of them have supported this cause on this effort. But when's the last time that you saw any of the major conservation organizations turn around and put out a public service announcement or commercials on national television or on Hulu or Netflix or anywhere online to say, this is who we are and this is what we do and this is why you have what you have, so you can turn around and thank us for it? They don't.
Right.
They turn around and do it to their members. They turn around and do it at conventions. They do it at banquets. They do it at fundraisers. They do it to all their outreach. But when's the last time they did it to the non-hunter? Right. But the antis have been hitting the non-hunter over and over and over, and they've been slowly chipping away at the non-hunting public to get more and more support, knowing full well that they're not going to get 80%. Maybe they don't get 70%, but all they need is a few percent to turn around and turn the needle when it comes to an election where you're probably going to have something in the neighborhood of 54 to 46, or you're going to have it 51 to 49. They've been chipping away at the non-hunter, and we haven't been doing a damn thing unless we actually tried to take somebody hunting, which is not in most people's deal unless they were brought up around it or they know something.
Which is ironic because my whole mission statement is mentorship is conservation. If you want hunting to last for generations to come, you got to invest in the hearts and lives of other people. Period.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Hunting has no teeth. The hunters as a whole have no offensive, right? We can play defense, but we don't go recruit. We don't go attack and say we plant our flag. We don't say this is it, baby. America, everybody who doesn't hunt, this is what we do and this is why we do it. Come join us.
And politics is what people don't want to do because they want to get away from the freaking everyday BS that we have to deal with in life. That's why you go hunting.
Yeah.
You spiritualize and naturalize yourself because I'm outdoors and I turn around and breathe the landscape and I see it and I hear it and it gets me more in tune. When you turn around and go back and you have to fight, that degrades your. I mean, look, John, I'm not hunting this year. You know what I'm doing? Ballot initiatives. That's it.
Yeah.
We're not going hunting at all. We didn't apply for licenses in the state that I'm turning around and trying to defend and save the hunt in. There's something wrong. On the September 18th, I went and testified at the Colorado State Capitol and the Senate Ag Interim Committee about 2 wildlife conservation bills. You know how many people showed up? Me.
Wow.
Gaspar Pericone showed up online, and I was there in person. 1 million sportsmen and women of the state of Colorado. How many different organizations do we have? And I showed up. Not one letter, not one virtual testimony, not one in-person testimony besides me. That's where our system is broke. You know how many people showed up on the other side to testify for other things? Dozens, because they all had representation.
Yeah.
Now, that's being critical, but we are the only organization in the state of Colorado that has lobbying representation at the Colorado State Capitol to defend the sportsman rights of what is necessary to save the hunt, so to speak. There's not another organization. They might chime in on a bill. They might turn around and provide some feedback. They might provide some testimony. We are all partners. I'm not throwing them out with the bathwater, but we're the only one that has three full-time lobbyists that turn around and supply the lobbying representation. And we were formulated back in 2017, and I've been playing this game for 20 years before that. Every organization should have state representation, but as a 501c3 group, non or tax deductible charitable group, they can't do the stuff that is C4 like what we can do. I'm not saying we're better, but we don't pull fences, and we don't do land acquisitions and conservation. We fight. That's what we were formulated to do, because we knew how detrimental this gubernatorial administration would be starting in 2018, and we formulated CRWM in 17. And so that's where we're at now. And I've said this many, many times. When Governor Polis got elected in 2018 and took office in 2019, miraculously, the first time that HSUS came at us to go through the Parks and Wildlife Commission with this governor's appointments, we defeated them 11-0. And they came back again in 2020, and we defeated them 11-0 with more of the governor's appointments. And they came back in 2021, and we defeated them again. And then 22, they decided to go to the legislature, and we defeated them again. This has been going on since this governor has been in office, and he's keep changing and modifying and adapting their strategy. And they're building up an armament, and they're supportive of this campaign. You can tell by what the first gentleman actually posts on social media and who their contributors are and who their friends are. This is an assault on the North American model, science-based wildlife management, the agriculture industry, the oil and gas industry, the logging industry, the natural resource mining industry, and anything that has to do with outdoor recreation. That can be consumptive. Period.
Yeah, people don't get that at all.
No.
It's out of sight, out of mind.
Out of sight, out of mind. And the thing that really bugs the hell out of me is when people say, just like what you said at your prelude there, that first they came after the trappers, then they came after the houndsmen, then they came after the predator hunters. Well, I tell you what, they just gave the playbook here in this last email. The mountain lion hunters and the bobcat hunters are on the list, but we're going after the sheep hunters. We're going after the elk hunters. We're going after anybody that turns around and considers anything to be a trophy. Look, how many species? Was there 29 big game species on the North American continent? Mountain lion's one of them. They've called out the Boone and Crockett Club and Pope and Young Club over the course of the last 90 days over and over and over because they are trophy clubs. Now, if anybody looks at them and sees why they were created, they can see that they acknowledge the existence of mature classed animals to propagate the science-based wildlife management in perpetuity, sustainable wildlife management in perpetuity.
Right.
But to these assholes, it's trophy, period. They're trophy books. Look how many trophies are in the book from Colorado or from Utah or Texas or wherever the heck it might come from. They want to turn around and stop it. And they're setting the tone, and they're setting the narrative, and they're determining how we do our messaging. And they're hitting it from the top to the bottom. And right now, we're the only ones that are in the way, the immediate way. And if we fall here, well, that prelude that you said earlier, I mean, who's next?
Yeah. It's so interesting. This society, I don't know if you know this or not, but I'm a school teacher. Mm-hmm. And so I get to view things, and I get to watch things in the progression of society through the youth and how it's taught and how it responds to the educational process. And what I realized is people don't hold their own knowledge. They expect other people to know things for them, or they expect the internet to know things for them. And therefore, they don't need that. Why do I need to know anything? Mm-hmm. Right? And that's sad, right? And this is one of my big things. I'm going to be giving a talk here at the Western Hunt Expo this coming February, is how to talk about hunting, right?
Mhm.
Because it's one thing to participate in it. It's a whole nother game to be able to advocate for it, to talk and
Exactly.
share about how powerful and transformative hunting has been in your life and why everyone should support it. And I use the word should, and I don't use that word very often.
Mhm.
I like to say, you don't should on people. But in this case, yes, people need to support hunting. They don't need to participate in it, but they need to understand it and they need to support it. Because, in history, to not act is to act. To not
Right.
speak
Right.
is to speak, right? And the problem is that we've had this go along, get along attitude for so long, right? Where are the warriors that are going to ruffle the feathers and take a stand and say no, no
No more.
more, no more. This is not happening. And that is the pacifism that I feel is like frog in a pot in America, right? Like get off of mainstream media and actually take a look and do some reading, right? One of the things that I focus on, and this isn't about me, this is about this issue, but one of the things that's really helped me this year is I made it a point to actually read a physical, tangible book every single day. Not scrolling social media, not just reading headlines, actually diving into paper, and that is where you start to retain knowledge, you start to understand, you start to comprehend all of that because you are diving into gaining your own knowledge. And so this podcast, all the listeners out there, you need to understand how to speak about hunting. You need to be able to go into the lion's den, I guess no pun intended,
No pun intended.
and be able to stop the lions and stop the people that are coming to attack us and say, no, get behind me. This is how it's going to go. This is no more shall this be approved, because we are doing things for the betterment of society, for the betterment of humanity, for the betterment of wildlife and wild places. Um, it's saddening, furiating, and disheartening to see that. I talk to a lot of people that they're like, "Oh yeah, I've hunted before," or you know, but they don't talk about like, "Oh yeah, it's cool. Like my dad did it one time, or I did it one time." They don't talk about needing to make sure it lasts or the impact of it.
Mhm.
And it's taught within hunter safety, but how often are people taking hunter safety, and at what age, right? Are they
Right.
taking it at 13 years old, 14 years
Right.
old, where they don't really understand the initiative process, voting, and the impact of what it actually means?
Well, and people have to make a determination of what's important to them. And there's a quote that I refer to often, Johnny, and it says, "I would have been a lot further in life if I would have put myself first for a change."
Mm.
And okay, now that's true. I mean, I can say that myself. I mean, I mean, there's not a damn thing I've done in the last year for myself. I did go to Africa on a trip that I had scheduled during COVID, and I spent 7 days there. I cut it back from a 12-day hunt, and I had a good time. And my wife and my kid were going to kill me if I didn't go. But he was running the business, and she was running the business. But stop and think of that phrase. I would have been a lot further in life if I would have put myself first for a change. Okay, but there's a selfish component to that. I would have if I and I'm thinking, yeah, but everybody's got the same amount of time in a day. We all have 24 hours. We've
Right,
all got 7 days a week. It's a matter of what we decide to do with that time.
right.
Now, I'm not saying that everybody needs to do what dumbass Dan Gates has done, because dumbass Dan Gates is spending 90 to 100 hours a week on this stuff. And before this ballot initiative dropped, it was around 50 to 60 hours. So it was still a major contributing factor to eating our life up. But now it's almost unattainable. It's almost insurmountable to the point to where it's like it doesn't stop. It just grows. It's like this giant cancer. It's like locusts on a cornfield that you cannot stop because they've taken all the pesticides away. I mean, there's no way, shape, or form. However, I think that if the sportsmen would take the time to think about that I, what do we do for the we or the us or the it more than the I? That if we all just turn around and said, okay, I'm going to turn around and just like what you said, read a book. How about if we say we're going to dedicate an hour or two a month to actually do something that's positive when it comes to conservation? And I'm not talking about going to a banquet, and I'm not talking about pulling fence or doing a fundraiser. I'm talking about actually writing a letter to your congressman or to your legislator or going to a county commission meeting when they're going to turn around and do a solar sighting deal that you're screwed on your winter kill or your winter range or your calving grounds or whatever it is. You turn around and dedicate 1 to 2 hours a month. That turns out to be 12 to 24 hours a year. Big freaking deal. But if every sportsman, if 11 million sportsmen and women said, I'm going to do something for it and for the cause as opposed to I'm going to do something for we as opposed to I, we would not have an animal rights force that is such a juggernaut that we would have to sit there and keep doing the stuff that we're doing to try to fight, Darth Vader at the doorstep.
You say that, and what my instant reaction to it is, it's both. It's wildlife conservation and it's yourself. It's I. It's and life, and this is what people really need to wrap their heads around. It's not either or.
No,
right? You don't.
It's an addition to.
Yes, because just like when you fly on an airplane, they say put on your own oxygen mask before you help others with theirs. Meaning, if you put in 1 to 2 hours of effort towards making sure hunting lasts, that you're doing it for the whole cause, but you're doing it for yourself. It's for yourself. You're making sure that it's there.
Well, and see, in the animal rights industry, the extremist industry has figured out that we don't. That they have groups and a few people that they have to turn around and fight. And they're so surprised at what we've done here in Colorado over the course of the last 12 or 13 months. First of all, they didn't think we were going to beat them 5 times in a row. And now that we're at the ballot, they didn't think that we were going to be able to turn around and come up with the money. We couldn't organize. We couldn't collaborate. We couldn't build an army. We couldn't we couldn't do this. We couldn't do that. We couldn't do this. We hear more often than not that this is the most formidable, well-organized, well-funded opposition that we've seen in the course of our history. This is the animal rights groups talking about us. This is the most formidable. Okay, well, that makes me feel really good. However, I'm thinking, why do we have to do that? Why hasn't somebody been before us? Why aren't they worried about anybody more than our dumbasses here in Colorado? Because they know that this is the stomping grounds that they have the opportunity with this administration, with this ideology, the way Colorado has grown, and what they've been able to brainwash our society into. This is not a one-off. This is something that is a planned agenda. And if you look at the book, the blueprint that actually follows the guidelines of what they've instilled since the year 2000 here, they've established this roadmap and this protocol and this playbook. The last time that we had a Republican governor in the state of Colorado was when Governor Bill Owens was elected. That's the last one. That was in 2000. They have their playbook and their roadmap. Yeah. They didn't expect us to be able to turn around and plant a flag and put up a barrier and then turn around and rally like what we have and create this juggernaut that what we've been able to do. They didn't think we had this in us because they've been beating us down so flipping much over the course of the last 15 or 20 years. Not because they did. It's just because we just didn't show up.
Yeah.
We didn't turn out.
Real quick, just because in case someone is listening to this podcast and hearing this for the very first time, why is this the domino effect for attacking hunting?
The way it's worded, it'll set a precedent to the point to where it makes it easier for courts and legislatures and other administrations to turn around and say, look at the definition here. Look at the definition of trophy hunting. And trophy hunting is exactly what I said. It's intentionally killing, wounding, stalking, pursuing, and trapping. That will be the domino effect. The average person, when we started this conversation, and they changed their language at different levels of the game plan. But if you look at the original measure language, you look at the original ballot title language, they didn't want us to use the way they worded it, Johnny, is they didn't want us to use hounds with electronic collars and tracking devices. But it didn't say for mountain lions. It said electronic collars and tracking devices. That was inhumane. That was not fair chase. When you showed the language to some of our counterparts, and they said, "Well, Gates, I don't really think you should be hunting mountain lions, or I've already hunted a mountain lion, or and then I would look and I'm like, you're using your Springer Spaniel to hunt pheasants. Yeah. You're using your pointer to hunt quail. Yeah. You got a lab in the blind that you're hunting ducks with. What about the beagle that your kid hunts rabbits with? Well, but that's not hounds. No, but it says electronic collars and tracking devices are unfair and unsporting and cruel and inhumane. That sets the precedent because this will be the preemptive strike. When they started looking at that, then you get guys going, hey, wait a minute, maybe those guys are right. Mm. And they start looking at it and dissecting it and trying to get a synopsis out of it. And they're like, no, I think these guys are right. How can this be just translated to one method of take or one season or one animal? It isn't. It's every single thing that we can employ. It's just that they don't think that we're going to be smart enough or nobody's going to pay attention because we're just talking about mountain lions and bobcats. And just like the lynx here, lynx are listed in here, but we all know that lynx are federally and state protected in the lower 48. So you can't kill them. But when they were asked that question during the Supreme Court hearing that we had here, well, why did you include lynx in this? They said, well, because if it ever becomes delisted, we want to make sure that it can never be harvested. They didn't say if it becomes recovered. They said if it's ever delisted. Look at the wording that they're doing on wolves. They don't want them delisted because they don't want wolves to be killed. Yeah. They don't want them to be managed. They don't want them to be. It's this holistic approach that they bring to the table to get what they want because they think that they can buffalo the general public that we've not been messaging or advertising to over the course of the last 40 years because they don't know the lingo. They don't know the strategy. They don't know the method of take. They don't know the seasons. How many people do you know that are non-hunters that don't even know you have to buy a freaking license or you have to take a hunter safety course?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Why don't they know that?
Right.
Because the game agencies aren't talking to them unless it's some sort of a recruitment program where they're doing hunter education classes, but just to the general public. Yeah. It's our duty to make sure that we plant that flag and we get that message out. And I think it's our duty to hold our organizations that we're all members of accountable and say, what are we going to do collectively to start advertising and messaging to the general public that is a non-hunted public? Yep. Because we can't keep going like this. We can't keep coming up and saying we need $5 million and they're spending $5 million every single year in some state when that money would be well better spent on conservation and wildlife habitat.
Right.
No, we're putting it toward politics and attorneys and polling and strategies and yard signs and whatever the hell else we need to do out there.
Yeah.
We should be spending our money on messaging preemptively to be able to get the general public to say, we support hunting. We support conservation. We support stewardship. We support science-based wildlife management.
The other thing is this whole idea of it being initiative driven. It is
yes.
Like, that's scary.
Mm-hmm. 26 states have it. 26 states have it. I mean, you tell me if it falls here, that what other Western state are they not going to look at that has a ballot initiative process that they go, hey,
state of Washington, I know is gonna that'll be very quick on the list.
Look what they're doing in Oregon. Look what they're doing in Washington. I mean, New Mexico's on the chopping block. They banned trapping on federal state land down there through the legislature, and they gave an exemption for the Native Americans. Why the Native Americans get to turn around and trap on public land? Why can't anybody else trap on public land?
Right.
That they give it an exception or an exemption to make everybody think, oh, there's an ideology behind this. Just like I'll read this. Whereas people just don't think I'm popping this stuff off on top of my head. The arguments for Proposition 127. This is for the ballot initiative. Bobcat and mountain lion hunting causes the animals pain and trauma. The hunting of mountain lions may involve the use of dog chases, while the hunting of bobcats may involve the use of baits, lures, and live traps. Hunting and trapping these animals, often for trophies or the commercial trade, is an unnecessary practice. That's the argument. Argument against that we put in there. This measure restricts the ability of the wildlife management experts at CPW to make science-based decisions to achieve the state's ecological objectives, which include preserving biodiversity, ensuring sustainable ecosystems, and protecting endangered species. The state currently manages a healthy population of bobcats and mountain lions, proving that its current management practices, which include regulated hunting, are working. This measure undermines these objectives by disregarding the expertise and research necessary for effective wildlife management. Furthermore, lynx hunting is already illegal and the population is considered stable. Now, we fought like hell to be able to turn around and go through 3 draft analysis on this blue book, which includes 2.5 pages on Proposition 127 and 109 pages total. But if you look at their arguments, it's unnecessary.
It's opinion driven.
It's all emotion. It's all emotion. The other component of their argument says bobcat and mountain lion populations can naturally regulate themselves without the need for hunting or trapping, and there is no consistent evidence that banning these activities would create new dangers to the public. Big cats provide valuable ecological contributions, and Colorado should protect them rather than allowing them to be hunted. Where circumstances warranted, federal, state, and local officials will still be allowed to protect human life with lethal and non-lethal methods. Now, then our argument for that comes back is hunting mountain lions and bobcats provides an important source of income to the state wildlife management system and many local communities. Furthermore, agriculture producers and landowners will lose the ability to be reimbursed for any damage caused by a mountain lion. If a hunting ban results in an increased population of mountain lions, those damages may become more frequent and costly for those affected. So the reason that's important is because when you turn around and ban the harvest of this, there's no management, then you take them out of the big game status, then there's a big game damage program that we have. They will not be compensated for loss, for depredating loss, because they are not a big game animal. So now the agriculture industry is like, wait a minute. Okay, you're not hardly compensating us on wolves that you introduced, even though you've only got 11 of them. But you're not going to compensate us on at all on mountain lions because they're not a big game species? The hypocrisy of what the arguments are from the opposition versus the arguments are from the science-based side of things are two polar opposites. But the average person won't take the time to read the 2.5 pages in the blue book or the 109 pages in the entire book itself.
Yeah.
They're going to turn around and read that first ballot title that I read you at the beginning. And those are where our decisions are going to be made. And that's why you have to spend millions and millions of dollars to get through the thick skulls of people that don't pay attention, that are uneducated, that don't understand the difference between hunting versus control is what they would actually like us to believe. They don't understand. I'm just trying to get across that message to that general non-hunting public. It's not the anti-hunting public, because we already know how they're going to vote.
Yeah.
We're just talking non-hunters.
I want to say a couple things right here because this is very poignant into modern day society. Is first off, words matter. Words matter, right? It says in the Bible, out of the mouth can bring life or it can bring death, right? The tongue is sharper than a two-edged sword. So with that being said, there's a reason why our founding fathers put in the First Amendment, the Bill of Rights, freedom of speech.
Yep.
If we do not know how to use words, whether written or spoken, then we are already fighting a war with no weapons.
Yes.
No weapons. We have to. We need to. We must. For the sake of our humanity, we need to understand the importance of words, the definitions of words, what they mean. The simple thing of can I or may I is huge. Can signifies whether or not you have an ability to. May signifies permission to, right? Like, can I come in? I don't know. Can you? Can I go to the bathroom? I don't know. Can you? May I
Mhm.
go to the bathroom? Yes, you may. These are the things that, as a school teacher, I work with my students a lot on because words matter. The second part of that is if you actually, and this could draw criticism, Dan, which is interesting. At least it would create dialogue. You can understand now why certain people were allowed to vote and certain people were not allowed to vote because you had to have skin in the game. You couldn't just be persuaded by some random person walking down the street talking, saying, "Hey, we got this initiative. Come vote for it." You had to have some skin in the game for why you were voting.
Mhm.
And if you didn't have skin in the game, then you didn't get a seat at the table because the decision makers of this world, they want us dumb. They want us uneducated. They want
Yep.
us not to know history. They want us not to know words. They want us to just read headlines or see headlines and then tug on the heartstrings rather than on the logic and the facts of the matter.
There's 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 so many fallacies and falsehoods when it comes to the political side of our environment. Uh, and I think that goes back to part of our original conversation, Johnny, that why don't sportsmen and women get involved?
Mhm.
Because they just don't want to deal with the crap.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to deal with the crap either, but I just refuse to turn around and roll over because I think the opposition's goal is to stop every single thing. It's not one thing.
Oh, I agree.
Look, I've gone through three different ballot initiatives in my life. In 1992, they banned the spring harvest of bears with hounds and baits and spring hunting with Initiative 10. 4 years after that, Wild Earth Guardians came back and turned around and took foothold traps, body gripping devices, and cable restraint devices away. And so that was Amendment 14 to the Constitution. Hence why we can only use live traps. We can only use cage traps anyway, which in 2020, we had the Wolf Initiative, Proposition 114, that brought wolves in through ballot initiative, which I think is absolutely ludicrous. I mean, I'm not opposed to wolves. I said that on many other podcasts, many other meetings, many other social functions. I'm not opposed to wolves. They come in here naturally, fine. Let's manage them. Let's not pedestalize them, but let's not bastardize them either. Let's not marginalize them. They come in here naturally, find a place for them and figure out how you're going to incorporate that in. But to bring them in through a ballot initiative, to the first time in the United States, ballot initiative to bring a predator in. First time, we got to be the first time for everything. That's not coincidental.
Right.
It's not coincidental because look at the governor that we got. You turn around and bring that mentality in as soon as it grabs hold. And if we don't correct it now, we have a chance to correct it during this process. If we don't correct it now, there would be two ballot initiatives. First time in the United States, you have two ballot initiatives, one to bring something in, one to take something out. Take the hunting out. The other ones was bring it in, but not allow any management, not allow any hunting. This is a unprecedented sense of history that we have a chance to correct. We have a chance to reverse. We have a chance to plant our flag. If we don't and we're not successful, I will guarantee that within a year, you will see another ballot initiative attempt in some other state, maybe Colorado in 26, because they can't do it in 25 because of the has to be a tax initiative then. But in 26, I could see them doing it here, but it's more likely they'll turn around and take a lower hanging fruit, go to another location, and then be able to say, look what they did in Colorado.
Right. Right. And I'm I'm pulling from my coaching side of things. I was always told and taught that if you do it once, you can do it again. Hey,
Yep.
hey, you did it once, you can do it again. Hey,
Yep.
and it works on the flip side of that as well. Um,
Mm-hmm.
just real quick, I pulled up a map about 26 states and ballot initiative process. Let's see here. So every Western state minus well, every Western state has a ballot initiative.
Yep.
New Mexico has voter veto referendum. I'm not going to get into that exactly. Texas is not an initiative state, either is Nebraska. But if you went from Texas and you drew a line all the way up from Oklahoma, Nebraska, South and North Dakota, and then went west.
It's all ballot initiative.
That's all ballot initiative.
Yeah.
Florida, Mississippi, Illinois, Ohio, Michigan, Maryland, Massachusetts, and Maine.
Yeah, stop and think. Look what they tried to do in Maine, the bears.
Yeah.
What they've done in Massachusetts, trapping beavers. What they've done in Maryland. I mean, the ballot initiative states. Look where these instigators are from. They're from Baltimore, Maryland.
Yep.
They started there, and they string their tentacles out, and they find individuals like Samantha Berger Miller from Washington State, that she was wreaking havoc out there, working for Wildlife for All and Wildlife First, or whatever the hell else she was working for.
Yep.
They get her to come here. She starts Cats Aren't Trophies, and she turns around and immediately is running the ballot initiative here.
Yeah.
This is not by happenstance. This is not just where they throw a dart and go, hey, where do you want to go next? They have a plan of attack, and they have it well strategized, and they have it well funded, and they're doing it off $19 a month or $26 a month or $18 million a month or whatever the hell they're doing.
Yeah.
There's a plan of action in place, and Colorado just happens to be the ripest fruit for the picking at this point in time because of the political makeup, because of the naivety of the amount of people that have moved here over the course of the last 15 or 20 years. We've gained 1,100,000 people in the last 12 years. That doesn't sound like somebody in California or Texas, but that's 20% of our population growth in the last 15 years.
Well, that's fascinating.
Yeah. I mean, you look at what we had in 1990, we had 2.9 million people in the state of Colorado. We've got 5.9 million now.
Wow.
That's a big difference when you turn around and start talking political wishes, wants, and desires.
Right.
Easy to turn around and get the public to do what you want. I want to read you another quote because I'm a quote type guy.
Oh, same here. I love it.
You can't leave those who created the problem in charge of the solution.
Right.
So we're going to turn around and make the people in charge for the ones that created the problem. Yeah. I think that's an absolute perfect statement for Colorado's wildlife and natural resources, that we're going to let them create the problem, and now we're going to turn around and put them in charge of the solution.
It's so mind-boggling that money, religion, and politics are the three things that are the strongest parts of foundation of how we define ourselves as human beings, or how we measure ourselves.
Yeah.
And yet we're not allowed to talk about them. Or
no.
as said by society, like how dare you talk about money, religion, and politics? Like, dude, if someone signs up for hunting, you better know that it's a political thing. Like it's an and thing. It's and for the spiritual aspect and all that, and the food, and it's political. Get ready.
And I think that we've gotten to a point now to where, to your point, we've expected somebody to tell us what's right, or what's wrong, or what's indifferent. And some of the arguments that I've got, and I've got a meeting tomorrow with the editorial board for the Denver Post, the major paper here, and which is hard to get in front of them. It's extremely hard to get in front of them, especially in a state like this that's so liberally minded.
Yeah.
But when you don't rely on the experts of an agency like Colorado Parks and Wildlife, that to me that's like the public saying we're not going to rely on the medical board, and we're just going to turn around and run ballot initiatives to do brain surgery and chemotherapy.
Right.
We don't know shit about it, but we're just going to go turn around. That sounds like a good deal to me.
Yeah.
And I think that when you muzzle your experts, we've got 350 legitimate scientists in this agency out of around 1,200 people. But the experts that are claiming to know so much are the Cats Aren't Trophies experts. They have an agenda. Our science says this, so you shouldn't do that. Colorado Parks and Wildlife, their scientists say, we're going to do it for the benefit of the wildlife. And if there can be an offtake or a quota or a sustainable management program for people to enjoy that, that's great. But if not, we're going to suppress that. That's the science. They have no objective to turn around and do anything other than for the management and the sustainability of the wildlife in perpetuity.
Right.
But the antis come in and go, we've got all these experts. Look at their experts. They got a beaver guy out of Massachusetts. They got another guy that's from Nebraska. They got another guy that turned around and never did anything with mountain lions, bears, or wolves. But by God, he's an expert. The people that are here in Colorado, that they're the legitimate experts that have dedicated their entire career to this for specific segments of wildlife management. Some guys are fishery guys. Some got the aquatic side. Some are mammalian. Some are the avian side. The experts on the other side, they know it all. We're an expert in every single thing. We know about salmon and we know about grizzly bears because grizzly bears eat salmon. And we know about deer because we saw deer have chronic wasted disease in Mississippi because they were transported from Oklahoma. That doesn't make it factual. Just because you saw it doesn't mean that you're the scientist on it.
Right.
But they're professing that our science is right from their side, but the science within the agency is wrong. And they know they can continue to say that because the agency can't rebut it. The agency can't refute it because the governor said, shut up, you got a gag order, you don't say anything. And they know that they're fighting an enemy that cannot fight back. So it's our job to turn around and try to get the facts and the data and the statistics out.
It's you go back to American history and this whole idea of monopolies, right? And how monopolies are a horrible thing. And yet it turns out that whole modern society and politics is monopolies. You get your people in, and top to bottom, you tell them what you can and cannot do, say, and then you run voter initiatives against people that can't say anything, otherwise they're going to get fired or lose their jobs, and they're held hostage by the political process, rather than it having true transparency and freedom and local levels. And people are hired in positions for a reason. Let's hear what they have to say.
Well, you want to hear another quote? We live in a time where intelligent people are being silenced so that stupid people won't be offended.
It's crazy.
I mean, I think that the voters of Colorado are smart enough to figure out, for the majority, that they're getting the wool pulled over their eyes on many, many different things with this particular administration and the ideologies that follow it. Now, I might be wrong. I might be hopeful, but I'm also a realist to think that, look at the wolf deal, knowing full well that the average outdoor enthusiast or the average sportsman or the average landowner or rancher didn't think that the wolf deal was going to pass. So they didn't vote, or they didn't think it was important enough. And lo and behold, it passed. But it passed 50.9% to 49.1%.
That's too close.
Yeah. And so now if we win by that, they'll probably call foul. If we lose by that again, then I guess the writing's on the wall, and Colorado has changed to the point to where maybe it's irreversible.
Yeah.
If we lose 70 to 30%, we're just absolutely screwed. But if some way, shape, or form we cannot come out and we win 56 to 44, or 54 to 46, or maybe we win 50.5 to 49.5. Either way, we will have spoken and turned the cards, because I think that the people would have realized that they've had the wool pulled over them from the wolf, from a lot of the other things that have gone on in this administration. This is a lame duck administration. It's got 2 years, 3 months left. And you know what happens on lame duck stuff? Everybody wants to do executive orders, get everything accomplished, so then when they go out, they can say, hoorah, we got everything that we wanted.
Right.
But if we stop this, and I want to throw this out too, because the people that aren't listening to us regularly, there's 2 other ballot initiatives that the city and county of Denver voters get to vote on. One is a fur ban. It's Ordinance 308, and the other one's a slaughterhouse ban. That's Ordinance 309. Now, I can't vote on that because I don't live in the city and county of Denver. But they can vote on everything statewide that we're talking about here for Proposition 127. But the fur ban, when I ask you fur ban, what do you think? It's a fur ban in the city and county of Denver.
I think that they don't want furs to be bought and sold.
Yep. And cowboy hats and fishing lures and Native American crafts, anything that has a fur fiber.
Wow.
But people say fur ban, and they think about rich people wearing mink coats or lynx coats or whatever. They've tried to incorporate the language of that with the Pro Animal Future group, with this Cats Aren't Trophy group on the Bobcat side of things.
Wow.
When you think of a slaughterhouse ban, you think that there's this like district that you got to get rid of the entire district. There's one slaughterhouse in the city and county of Denver. It's been here for 70 years. It's the largest slaughterhouse in the Western United States for processing lamb. It's got 250 employees. It's a cultural component of where Native Americans and Hispanics and Western landowners and ranchers take their sheep to have them processed for human consumption. Both of those ordinances are by Pro Animal Future. They've said on the hot mic, our intent is to change the mindset and the way people think and what they eat and how they live. They don't want to stop just the processing and the slaughter. They don't want to stop just the fur. They want to stop every single thing that goes along with it, but they use it under the guise of cruel and inhumane, and we don't want you to turn around and do this. However, the Native Americans, look at our Instagram page and some of the stuff that's coming out. Look at Vote No on 308 for Instagram. The Native Americans are coming out. The Hispanic culture is coming out to oppose this. We've got city councils coming out. We've got legislators coming out. We've got the Democratic caucus coming out. They see that there's an extreme overreach. And we think there's a really good chance to connect the three of these ballot measures together. Then because you have, then we turn around and maybe can capitalize on. You have a food source, you have a fiber source, and you have wildlife management and sustainable hunting source. Those three things together are the same type of people that we're talking to straight across the board.
Yep.
And we think that there's enough of a movement to where people are going to say, wait a minute, they don't want us to eat. They don't want us to wear. I mean, Denver, Colorado, you won't be able to buy or display or barter or sell or trade or manufacture a cowboy hat. The Denver Bronco cheerleaders wear freaking cowboy hats, for crying out loud. They've gone a little bit too far, but they've said it many, many times, just like what I read about the trophy hunting side of it. They don't want at all, they don't want anybody to do anything that they don't want them to do, and they're willing to turn around and sacrifice their morals, their values, and their ethics and lie to be able to get it accomplished.
Yeah, they want us to live in an artificial intelligence world, eat lab-grown meat, and do everything that the government, Big Daddy government, says. Mm-hmm. Vax me again, Big Daddy Gov. Hit me again with that next pharmaceutical. Yeah. Oh,
I'm one of the ones that's willing to stand up and dedicate my time on the conservation side of stuff. And maybe one day I'll be a martyr, and maybe one day I'll be a hero, but more than likely I'll be a zero. But we have built a coalition. We built an armament. We built a magnificent juggernaut effect nationwide that is willing to turn around and stand up and say, hey, maybe enough is enough. Maybe we need to plant our flag in the sand.
Yeah. Well, the best thing is that courage is contagious. It only takes one person to say no, one person to take a stand and not bow a knee, one person to say, no more will this take place. And when that one person does it, other people feel more confident, and that courage builds within them. And then all of a sudden, the pro hunting community does have an army.
Yeah.
So I want to say thank you very much for taking a stand for us.
Well, it's I got a chip on my shoulder. There's been a lot of things going up, of course, the last 15 or 20 years, and they've drawn a line in the sand, and I've decided to make it a concrete line. Now, win, lose, or draw, I don't know yet. We'll see what happens on November 5th, but we got a lot of positivity. We got a lot of things going in benefit for us, and we got a lot of opportunities for people to engage in some capacity between now and November 5th as well.
Well, one of the most hopeful things that you shared is if any voter in Colorado actually reads the definitions of the initiatives, that right there is automatic. Oh, I'm voting no on 127. Yes. I think, and you'll have more people than you might think go through that and actually look. And that, I think, is a huge saving grace, because just based off of what is written on the ballot, that could be a toss-up. But when you read the actual definitions of them, it's like, whoa, that's extreme. No.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
I know Dan, he's a hunter, he's a good guy. He wouldn't want this to happen. I'm gonna make sure I stand with Dan on this.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that, the call to action a lot of the organizations have done about opposing the measure, Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation, Muley Fanatics, Wild Sheep, as I mentioned, Rocky Mountain Bighorn, the Sportsman's Alliance has joined forces. You got Congressional Sportsman Foundation, Colorado Bowhunters Association. The Mule Deer Foundation just jumped on board. Safari Club Internet. You name them. There's not an organization that you wouldn't think that would be part of this that isn't a part of it. They're all here in some capacity. Now, some of them don't have the financial resources that you would maybe think that they would, or that they can utilize because it's expended for other reasons. But the call to action, the efforts that they're doing, and we're seeing them come around. I think some of it is to your point, Johnny, about we got to ride with the cool kids. Everybody else is jumping on board, so we got to jump on board. I think that you get guys like the United Houndsmen of Colorado. They've gotten the hounding community from around the country to really join forces, from $500 donations to $10,000 donations. You've got individual podcast groups that are coming out of the woodwork that have helped us out significantly. We were on Meat Eater, which helped out magnificently. Bear Grease with Clay Newcomb. You got the Howl for Wildlife guys. Rockcast that I mentioned. You start throwing stuff out and see what the community and the industry has done. Mm-hmm. I got a big shout out to like Swarovski and Outdoor Edge. Outdoor Edge created a knife for us that sold out of, and now they're reordering. It's the Save the Hunt knife. Guys doing T-shirt sales and publications and swag and all sorts of things, to where the money comes into the pot for Save the Hunt and eventually to the Wildlife Deserve Better campaign. Mm-hmm. That stuff has never happened. I'm 61 years old. I can tell you I've never seen this sort of an effort, a grassroots effort, from little kids in Virginia sending their lemonade money because they run hounds to help, or to a guy that dumps a $20 handwritten check that looks like it was, like Thomas Jefferson wrote it out, and he dumps it in the mailbox in California, or to somebody sending us $250 from Florida saying, I just wish that when they come after the gator trapping down here, that somebody is here like what they have in Colorado.
Yeah.
This is a magnificent, monumental, epic effort. People doing fundraisers for us, people inviting us to functions, people raffling stuff off for us, people auctioning stuff off for us, donating money to the cause.
Yeah.
People that you would never, ever suspect that would come out of the woodwork to support an individual organization that is trying to do things to support every single entity that's out there. And everybody sees the value and the benefit. And that's why with CRWM, I'm going on a sales pitch here. That's why with CRWM, the mission is to enhance, promote, and defend the North American model of wildlife conservation and responsible wildlife management. We are not a membership organization. We don't give you magazines. You don't get free hats. You can buy a hat. You can buy a T-shirt with my damn face on it that the crew came up with. But we don't give you anything. We need your support so we can turn around and try to provide a mechanism, a defense for Colorado and what Colorado is supporting, to be able to be the first line of defense for all these other states and all these other methods of take and these seasons and these organizations. We're not saying we got the perfect roadmap, but hey, a guy told me about 3 weeks ago, he said Columbus was told that the earth was flat. Why do you think he turned around and took 3 ships around it? And I think we're at that point.
Yeah.
That their earth is not flat when it comes to conservation and supporting science-based wildlife management. But the antis thought it would be flat. And a lot of our comrades in arms, well, you can't do that. But there's no need to do that. They can't pass that. Yeah, they can. When they have the forces on their side, they can do a lot more damage than what we think they can do. But if we stop it, turn them back, force them to do something different, and stand up our side to be a little bit more supportive, a little bit more defensive and offensive at the same time, we can accomplish a hell of a lot of things. We owe it to our forefathers. We owe it to the guys that started this North American model movement in the 1880s and 1900s. We owe it to Roosevelt. We owe it to the Pinchots. We owe it to the Hornadays. We owe it to the Audubons. We owe it to those guys. We're just going to turn around and say, no, we're not going to do it anymore.
Right.
Somebody has to turn around and do it. And we're to the effort to where we got 27 days left before the election. We got a couple big events coming up. We got some fundraising opportunities coming up. We got a ton of commercials and social media outreach. This is a campaign. It's not me running it. I'm just running the behind the scenes minion side. We've got strategists. We've got strategy companies. We've got attorneys. We've got advertisers. We got the experts that know how to do this. And we're putting our best foot forward to turn around and try to make sure that we come out victorious on November 5th.
Yep. Yeah. I love it. Real quick, I want to ask you about after November 5th, right? So we've built quite a bit of momentum heading into this. The defense is starting to really waken up and be lively. What is the next step after this?
If we win, which I think we will, but if we win, we're going to do a preemptive strike. Then we go on the offense. People say, what are you going to do if you win? Well, first of all, 11 days after this election on November 14th and 15th, the Colorado Parks and Wildlife Commission will hear the East Slope Mountain Lion Management Plan. That was postponed till after this election. The East Slope Mountain Lion Management Plan is a replica, it's a duplication of the West Slope Mountain Lion Management Plan to better sustain mountain lion populations in perpetuity, along with the other 961 species of wildlife and 78 game species. But the governor's appointed commissioners, decided, probably wouldn't be a good idea if we turn around and made this political. So we're not going to vote on this before the election. Well, I think that it made it political because it showed that they maybe didn't want it to pass. So if we win, that will be on the ballot, on the commission's ballot for them to make a decision on 11 days after. If we lose, there is no East Slope Mountain Lion Management Plan because there's no need to manage mountain lions because there's no hunting season. So I think that's a travesty in itself. If we lose and there's no mountain lion management plan, that's 2 victories for the opposition. It's kind of hard for us to recover from that, and I'll admit that. But if we win, there's no way, shape, or form that this commission can deny that we need an East Slope Mountain Lion Management Plan. That gives us 2 victories. We're up 2-0. And then, if we're lucky enough to turn around and beat the fur ban and the slaughterhouse ban in the state of Colorado, that's 4 victories in the month of November. Then we can actually figure out what we want to do to be preemptive and do positive stuff, offensive stuff, not to go backwards, but to try to run some sort of legislation or at least make it relevant to the legislators during the next legislative session to say, see, this is who we are. This is what we did. And the people have spoken. Yeah, the wolf people have spoken before 4 years ago, but now we've turned around and turned the tide. And the reason it's so important to say all that, Johnny, is because in 2025, we can't run a ballot initiative that's other than taxes in the state of Colorado. Taxes are on odd years. Anything else can be even years. But in 2026, we or the opposition could run another ballot initiative if we were so inclined. Would it be a right to hunt and fish? I don't know. There's been talk about that. Would it be to raise the bar, to turn around and try to get people to have more restrictions and prohibitions on how they get ballot initiatives or what you do for constitutional amendments? Those are talks, maybe. But the best time to do that is on a gubernatorial election when this governor's going out and you've got a Democrat and a Republican running for office to turn around and step up. They're going to look back to the last election cycle, which would have been 24, and they're going to say, holy shit. The sportsmen and the ag community came together and they won 3 different ballot initiatives. And then they turned around and came out and they did some positive legislation. We need them on our side to get elected. We can't turn around and throw. So this is the long game. Now, you might be able to do some things in between, but you have to look at the long game. First of all, you got to get rid of the pompous, arrogant animal extremist that's in the Gold Dome right now and his husband. But we don't have to get rid of them. They're going to go on their own way because of the natural cycle of attrition through term limits. But we can do some preemptive stuff up until then. But we have to be looking, if we're successful now, what do we do to get us by to where we don't create any losses? And then what do we do to capitalize in 2026 and change the entire roadmap and playbook and strategize on how we benefit off of it? And maybe put a gubernatorial candidate in that's a Republican. I don't care if it's a Democrat, as long as his ideologies are similar to the people that care about Colorado's natural resources and habitat and wildlife.
Right.
It could be an independent, it could be a two-headed dragon for all I care. But there has to be some sort of strategy to think, just to your point, you win now, what are you going to do? But you got to do it in baby steps. I went through some trials and tribulations politically 2 years ago, and people said, what do you want to happen in 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, 180 days, and 365 days? You can't get to the 365 unless you capitalize on each one of those other steps. I like sports, and I'm a sports analogist. I turn around and give a lot of analogies about sports, but I'm not a Rhodes Scholar when it comes to that. But they're right. You have to take it one step at a time. And if we win here, I believe that we can capitalize one step at a time.
Do other states have organizations like yours that are reaching out to you to say, all right, we're ready to fight for and hold the line with you in our state?
There's a few that have surfaced. More often than not, what we're seeing is some states and individuals reaching out, going, "How do we duplicate or replicate what you guys have built?" And I often say, "Let us win first before we've got a good track record. We're undefeated. But if we lose this, nobody will want to emulate or duplicate or replicate what we've got, because they're going to remember the last fight."
Yeah.
But there's some states that have tried to pick up and start off with something positive to this magnitude, not that I'm aware of, that has been able to do it so quickly, but because of the sense of urgency, and we were well prepared enough to start it at the beginning. I mean, when the ballot initiative dropped last year, within 3 days, we hired the attorneys, we hired the strategy team, we had the money to be able to turn around and do it. And when the strategy team said this is going to cost several $100,000, we said, okay. And then when we had to go through the initial stages, they said it's going to cost a couple $100,000 more. We said, okay. We were poised to be able to do that. And we knew that we could raise some money, that we could immediately start coattailing off of every organization and entity and podcaster and influencer and business out there that we could. But that's all part of the playbook. But some of those states, I think, have maybe waited longer than what they should have. Is it too long? I don't know yet. But I think that they waited a little bit longer than what they should have, and they should have taken advantage of things when they knew that they had the opportunity, legislatively or commission-wise or gubernatorial-wise or whatever. And if they didn't, shame on them. If they don't now, after this, whether we win, lose, or draw, shame on them again.
Yeah. Fascinating. Well, I want to honor your time. This is a great topic, and we could go on forever. You are a warrior, brother, and I thank you for everything you've done, Dan. It's quite impressive. It's inspiring. I believe that inspired people inspire people, and by you taking a stand and fighting for justice and freedom and truth and honesty and what's right in this world, that you're leaving a legacy of love for others to follow and to also step up in their own right. So I really appreciate
There's a couple things I want to touch on real quick, just to let people know. October 18th in the Colorado Capitol, we've got the rally to oppose Proposition 127. Anybody hears that? It's October 18th from 11 till 2. And the same day is the deadline for the SCI raffle that SCI is running on our behalf. And you can go to savethehuntcolorado.com. It's a whitetail hunt for 2 in Saskatchewan. And there's another raffle for a Gunworks gun that Salida Gun Shop and Gunworks have donated. 2 raffles that SCI is running on our behalf, the Colorado chapter of SCI. You can get tickets for those at savethehuntcolorado.com, and that expires at midnight on the 18th, same day as the rally at the Capitol. And I mean, there's a ton of different things and organizations and stuff that are happening and going through. We hope to be able to give a level of a synopsis of victory. But if people want, they can go to wildlifedeservebetter.com, which is the issues committee. They can donate, or they can turn around and get some more information about this ballot initiative itself. You can also go to the shopping cart on savethehuntcolorado.com, and you can buy a T-shirt with my ugly mug on it, or you can turn around and get the mission statement that we've got, and we've got Save the Hunt shirts and stuff. The reason I'm bringing it up is all of that, every single level of what we got. Wildlife Deserve Better, anything at the Capitol, anything for Save the Hunt that SCI is doing for us is all going to fight the cause. So if somebody wants to do $5, they can do that. Or if they want to buy a shirt, they can do that. Or if they want to buy a raffle ticket, they can do that. It all goes to the fight to kind of help us get across the finish line and continue to buy advertisement all the way up and through November 5th.
Impressive. I love it. All right, guys. Thank you for tuning into this episode. Dan, thanks for coming on, sharing all your wisdom and knowledge. One more time, wildlifedeservebetter.com.
Yep.
Okay. And that's where people can go to donate or to purchase stuff and help support financially.
You bet. And the other one is savethehuntcolorado.com.
What is the difference, real quick, on those one more time?
So one is the C4, Save the Hunt, CRWM is the C4 to be able to turn around and do the lobbying efforts and be able to do the advocacy. The Issues Committee, you have to be licensed and as an Issues Committee under the Secretary of State to engage in ballot initiatives in the state of Colorado. So you had to form that, and that's a disclosure, transparency, accountability side of the fight. The other one you can donate to, but you're donating to a C4. Neither one of them are tax deductible because it's a campaign. It's not like donating to RMEF or any of the other organizations. So you've got a C4 that we're doing on the advocacy lobbying side, and you've got the Issues Committee, which is the actual fight for the campaign itself.
Gotcha. Same house, two different doors.
Yep.
There
exactly.
Love it.
You bet.
Love it. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of the Soul Seekers podcast. Thank you, Dan Gates, for being here and sharing your wisdom and knowledge. Remember, to not say anything is to say something, and to not act is to act. I hope you are filled with courage and ready to take on the world and take on all those who oppose everything that you believe in, because it is time to stand for personal freedom, personal sovereignty, and to actually take hold of what is ours. Be blessed. I want you to be filled with courage. Know that life is happening for you. It's not happening to you. We're not playing victim here. It's time to own it and live it out. So remember that hunting has the power to transform lives through primal adventure, and that you can never outgive good, as mentorship is conservation. For Johnny Mack and Dan Gates here, Soul Seekers Podcast, be blessed, everyone. Freedom on, and stay soulful.
Aim small, miss small.
That's
Thanks,
right.
Bud.
You're welcome. If you enjoyed today's podcast and want to support the show, you can always like, share, subscribe, and leave a rating, as it helps us share our mission of mentorship is conservation. Thank you so much for tuning in and being a part of Soul Seekers Nation as we transform lives through primal adventure. If you want to get more connected with the podcast, check out the Soul Seekers Nation Facebook group, as I look forward to connecting with you on the next episode. So stay tuned and stay soulful.